Hey guys, welcome back to Anything Goes Network. I'm Dan, and we're here for the review for the third episode of The Last of Us. Just came out on HBO Max today, just got done watching, and I'm going to share with you some of my opinions and what I think about the episode. Um, so we got third episode out. And again, I'm gonna warn you right here, right now, there are gonna be spoilers in these episodes, and just so you know, spoilers are gonna happen. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, uh, they took a they deviated quite a bit, um, in this episode. So basically, what I'm gonna do from now on here is I'm not gonna reference the game anymore. So the game, the show, they're gonna be separate things. The game, one, I mean, I haven't played it in like 9, 10 years, like since it came out. I haven't played through it since then, so I don't remember a whole. I mean, much of it, anyways. So I'm not gonna keep trying to reference it and compare and contrast or anything. And after watching this episode, it basically, I mean, they went in their own direction, like big time in this one. Um, Not saying that was a bad thing, but let's get more into it. So, starts out, it's right after, so the end of the last episode, Tess, they find out Tess is infected. She basically saves them, letting them escape while the horde comes and attacks her. She ends up blowing up the building with grenades and gasoline and all that, and killing herself in the process. So they escape. They go through and they leave, and their next step via Tess is go see Bill and Frank and see what they can do or whatnot. So they're on their way to go get Bill and Frank, who Joel knew previously because Joel and Tess were kind of, they knew them. They traded each other. They worked with each other in the past. They just know each other. It was mostly through Tess, but really that's how it is. So they're on their way there, and they stop by. So they're just hiking through the woods. There's not a whole lot. Nothing really goes on. Um, they go to Joel stops at basically one of these abandoned gas stations, and it's like one of his stash spots, I guess. So throughout the times that he's gone back and forth on this specific trip, he would, stash things away in certain spots. And then when if he ever goes by, he's like, oh, I need this, blah, blah, blah. So basically, he went there to grab what he could, but also trade out because he had a giant rifle on him that didn't have any ammo, so it was pointless to carry around. It was just extra weight. So he stashes that away for later if he needed it or whatever. And while he's doing his thing, of course, Ellie wanders off on her own, and of course finds a back room, and then of course finds a door that opens up to some basement. And of course she's like, "Well, let's jump down there." So she jumps down there, and lo and behold, she's poking around, and then of course there's an infected. She flashes her flashlight on there. It says it is an infected person, but is crushed by these cinder blocks. Pretty much can't do nothing, just sitting there, but still alive. So she decides to curiously walk up to it and decides to slowly fucking take her knife and cut his forehead open to like show some weird spider web looking shit. And then just like randomly just stab him in the head to kill him. And it was like that was basically showing this was her first, I think, first time killing an infected. And of course, Joel doesn't know about it because he's up there trying to figure out where the hell he left his stuff. And so she kills her first infected there and goes back up and pretends like nothing ever happened, pretty much. And so they move on. And that's really, I think that's the only time in the episode that there's I mean, yeah, an infected, like, scene in the show for this episode. And so they continue walking on. They're talking. Joel decides to give her a rundown because she keeps asking questions like, "How did it start?" This and that. And they see a crash plane. He talks about planes. He talks about the past. She ends up asking how it started, and he ends up explaining to her their whole idea of how it would have started in the show, and it was pretty much the cordyceps, which is the fungus that infects the human body now and turns them into biting monsters, um, or zombies, has evolved or adapted in a way to where they can actually survive in human body now. And then apparently it was these cordyceps got infected or into stuff like flour, grains, stuff like that. So people were, it got tainted in these factories that were built, that shipped this flour and this wheat or whatever you want to call it. Let's just call it flour. The flour gets shipped all over the country, sold at stores. People ate it. Either went out to the store and bought it. Thursday night, Friday morning, they ate it. By that night, they were sick. So on like September 26th, whatever the year it was, that day, that was the day that it happened. That morning they ate that stuff. By the end of the night, they're eating people alive. Like they got sick that quickly. Um, and he said within, by Monday, the next week, everything was gone. It was that quick. It was so just everything was gone and it was done. Um, So it's super interesting how they're kind of putting that they're putting more attention into how it started and this and that, and then they see basically an open graveyard, and then he starts talking about how these are people they didn't even have to be sick. It was just you go into a quarantine zone. If there's room, you go in. If not, you get killed. It was pretty much like that, and they just shot him, left him there to rot away. And then, of course, it goes to that, and then it, pans down into one of the skeletons, and then it goes back in time, back when they first started doing the quarantine, and everybody gets quarantined out of this town except for one, and it pans down to Bill, who's in his bunker, which is below his basement. So they're searching his house. Of course, he's in his bunker. He has cameras everywhere. He's watching it. He's making sure that nobody's going to come in. He has walls of guns. He is like he says survivalist. Um, it's prepper, however you want to call it. He's got a giant bunker. He's got everything. He's set up. He's ready to go. He knows everybody's getting quarantined out. Everybody's gonna be leaving, and it's the whole town to himself. And that's exactly what happens. So for what they do is they do the entire story of Bill. That's the whole episode. And they go through and he ends up it shows how he sets his house up, how he gets hot water, heat, natural gas, how he hooks, he just sets it up. He's set up for fucking ever. He gets anything he wants. He can loot whatever. He's good. He's got traps everywhere, tripwires, holes dug, whatever. And he goes for years by himself, chilling, doing his thing, just living. And eventually, someone falls into one of the holes, sets off his alarm. He goes out and checks him, and there he is. And it's a person he's not infected, and he's introduces himself as Frank. And hesitantly, he ends up helping him out. He feeds him a meal. The meal is like this gourmet, like 5-star restaurant meal. He's got a wine paired with it and this and that. Frank is kind of, oh, and he's dying over the food and this and that. Well, a short while after, they start playing piano and making out. So that's pretty much what goes on. And they end up getting together and they're partners. And they live a whole life that goes through, them, then it shows their whole relationship from going through arguing because Frank wants to paint the house and mow the yard and do this and that. And he wants to fix up the shops around so the city looks good. And Frank is like, or Bill's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're crazy. But, obviously it's not doing it. And they just go on, and then they end up meeting Joel and Tess through Frank because of Bill would have never done that, but Frank was like, "We're making friends," and he's like, "No, we're not." And of course, Frank gets his way. So then Joel and Tess end up coming over, and they make like business deals, kind of, but they also have a meal, and they kind of become friends ish. Bill never really liked him at all, and um so that's pretty much how that works. That's how Joel knows. So Joel's been there. He knows the key code for the gate and all that whatnot. And they even send messages to each other, and that's how they know like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and different codes for certain things like trouble or whatever, which was referenced in the first episode from Ellie finding the book. Um, And then cut forward a little bit, they go through, and then Frank ends up getting some kind of sickness to where he can't walk. He's got to be in a wheelchair. He's taking pills. Which how are they getting the pills? I don't know. That never was explained. It never really says what he's getting or what he's going through. It just seems like he's miserable. He's in pain all the time. He can't walk. He can't do anything. So he just sits around and paints and just whatever. So he wakes up, he one day he gets up early in the morning, gets himself in this chair, which apparently was one of the, exhausting and he couldn't do it. And he's like, this is going to be my last day. And they end up spending the whole day doing whatever Frank wants because at the end of the day, Bill was to basically kill him by overdosing him with pills in his wine. And they're supposed to do whatever they want. So they did this perfect day, and they show, they get married in front of the piano, and they go to the boutique, and they get dressed up, and they have a nice meal, and well, Bill's like, I'm gonna do the same thing, so, but without, he didn't want Frank to know, but he caught on pretty quickly. Um, so he pours the wine, he puts the whole bag in there, but Frank was like, "Is that enough?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he chugs the whole thing. And then, of course, Bill does the same thing. And he's like, "You put stuff in the bottle the first time?" And he's like, "Yeah, pretty much enough to kill a horse." And they both basically just killed themselves when they went to bed. And they just go to bed and they don't wake up. Joel comes by, then it cuts to that was the whole story. And the thing is, Bill is I know I said I wasn't going to reference between the game and the show, but Bill's in the game for the first game, and he references a little bit about Frank. I don't even think that he says his name. I don't know if he does or not, but he references him a little bit as a partner or whatever, and this and that. But he's like an angry man, but he's still alive when Joel's there. So there was a totally different, and it was a different tone and everything, and they just changed the whole story completely, at least a chunk of it, to the show. Now, did I mind that? No, because the way they did it was good. I like the fact that they're taking this opportunity to either how to explain it, to take these characters that really don't get time to develop, almost, develop in a video game sense, because that's not what the game is focusing on. It's focusing on the gameplay, focusing on this and that and anything, all these other elements. The show is going to focus on the characters, and they take this opportunity to not only deviate from the story and change it up because they can, but change it in a way where it's like this meaningful story about two characters that, and they go through a whole storyline. And no, there's what, two infected in the whole show that get killed, and it was one was a tripwire and one was Ellie, stabbing him in the head when he's crushed by blocks already. Not a lot of action. I mean, other than the Raiders, the Raiders come one night and attack Frank and Bill back when, and then like the middle-ish part of their relationship, Bill gets shot in the stomach and Frank ends up basically saving him. But they, get through this attack with the Raiders and whatnot with because of his traps and his electric fences and all this, stuff. Um, and they just take the time and they develop this whole story between these two characters. But by the end of it, those two characters are gone too. So it's a little. The only thing I didn't get is like, okay, is this kind of like an episode that's like it's just like the Bill and Frank episode? It doesn't really add or subtract anything to the full on arc of the story. Because it started with, before they weren't a part of it. This episode came, it introduces Bill and Frank, and by the end, they're gone. So I'm not too sure about that decision. I guess, I mean, I didn't mind it. I liked the episode. I loved the way that they are putting these characters and more into, like, they're developing their characters, and they're saying what they, I don't know, they're changing it up, but it's still good. um and but yeah, so and then Joel ends up coming to the house. They realize that they're gone. They don't see him because the door's locked. But they find, Ellie finds a note, and it basically says, "Yeah, we're dead. Don't go in the room. Just don't. You don't want to see it." And said basically, take whatever you need, which is kind of funny because again, when you see Bill in the game, he's an angry person. And you're like, "We need a car," and he's like, "There ain't no fucking way," and he's just angry about it. He like tries to handcuff you, and he's fucking pissed off that you're there, and you got to do all this stuff to get him to even give you some sort of a vehicle to leave. And in this one, in the show, it's like, we're already dead, and you can take whatever you want. Go ahead. Here's a car, by the way. It's in the garage. It runs perfectly. So it's seemed almost convenient in a way, but a little too convenient maybe. Um, it was definitely the least um action episode there was. Again, I mean, they wanted to tell you the story of Frank and Bill. There's nothing wrong with that. They wanted to show you what they thought would have been, the story of Frank and Bill in this world and how they seen it. So I mean, I had no problem with it. Nick Offerman was fucking fantastic in the episode. He's always good whenever he does. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person that played Frank. He did awesome too. Um, but yeah, so I mean, that was the episode. They left in the truck and they drove off. In the next episode, I think things are gonna start kicking back up on episode 4. Um, all in all, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know how. My only thing is the only important things that you get out from the episode, I think, is Ellie stabbing the infected, and then Ellie at the very end, she ends up finding a gun. You know, throughout the show from episode two, when they start leaving, is can I have a gun? Ellie's, can I have a gun? 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 You know, over and over and over again. And of course, no, 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 no. And no matter what, it's not happening. Finally, she ends up opening a drawer. She sees a pistol. She takes it, puts it in her bag, hides it. Of course, hides it from Joel. And that's it. You know, that's all we know so far. So those are the only pretty much important things that went on with this episode that you need to know about. The rest was pretty much just like a one-off romance story. I mean, I don't know. Like I can't. It just was weird to me that they killed both of them off. I can see having that be a part of it, right? And then, but if Bill was still alive, so maybe he. Oh, who knows? Maybe he is. Maybe they never really show it. But I don't think. I don't know. I honestly don't. So we'll see what happens. I'm guessing it was just a more of a one-off episode, I guess, more or less. Um, for my rating for this episode by itself, it's a 7 out of 10. I still, like I said, I was entertained. I like the fact that they were, taking a chance and really building up these characters and showing more of like how it is in this world, and even the little parts where Bill was talking or not Bill, Joel was talking about like how it started and how fast it went and what they were doing with people that didn't have room in the quarantine zones and all this stuff, like, and talking about planes and the stuff doing before and how it is now, and just showing just building up more characters and getting more meaning to behind all of it. Um, so yeah, like a 7 out of 10. Not like I said, not a lot of action, which is good. It's not a problem for me. I am curious though because I feel like I don't know if people are going to like this episode. I am curious to wonder how what other people think. Like, what are they doing? Like, they're just randomly putting this random episode of a romance novel in this fucking middle of this zombie show. Like, in a way I can see how someone would get upset with this episode. Only because it just like there's nothing. I can't say nothing happens because stuff happens, but I can't. I don't know. I'm curious what other people like. I personally didn't mind it. I liked what they did with it, with the whole story of Frank and Bill. I enjoyed it. I liked the episode. I mean, what can you say? Um, I don't know. Let me know below in the comments. Comment below. Did you guys like it? Did you? What do you think about the like having a one-off episode like that on episode 3? Like, I still, it's almost weird because I still don't even know what to think about it. Like, am I supposed to think that Bill's still alive? Or are they actually just both dead? And it was literally like, well, this is just their story, real quick, you know. And now let's move on. Um, yeah, just let me know. And if you guys like this, hit that like button, subscribe. It's AGN, Anything Goes Network. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, see ya.